Okay, I'd like to open the April 15th meeting of the Hollistob Zoning Board of Appeals. Prior to any action, I want to read into the record the following statement. Pursuant to the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, paragraph 20, as well as the select board's emergency order dated March 16th, 2020. The planning board will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the town's webpage within 24 hours in accordance with the governor's emergency action requirement of keeping the public informed of actions during the meeting. I would ask that all participants remotely attending this meeting please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting. This time, a roll call attendance vote will be taken. John Love, present. Jay Peabody,
Present.
Mark Bush,
Probably needs to unmute.
He's unmuted, doesn't have his mic up.
Mark, we're not hearing you.
He's unmuted on Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
So yes, present.
Elizabeth Dembitzer,
Present.
present. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the public and presenters that are here. As we get going, I first want to thank you for being here and thank you for putting up with this. I will also ask your forbearance. This is our first time through using this technology, so we're going to do our best to make this work well, but if we stumble a little, just would ask your patience, and we'll try and make sure things work as well or as close to as well as they do when we're in person. Couple of rules that I'd like to ask of those in attendance is that if while you're not speaking, that you mute your mic so that we don't get a lot of background noise. Also, if you have questions, wish to be recognized, I'd like to ask that people use the chat function, which you can find on the bottom of your screen, just to state your name and say you'd like to be there. That way I will try and recognize you. If that's not, and usually the time for people to speak, I will try to be very clear about it so you know when it is, but that'll allow us to keep some order to how things go here. I think that's most of the rules that we've got here. Also, please state your name before speaking, and that, for the most part, the board as well, if you can remember, just will make it easier for the recording for people to understand who is speaking and when. So there we have it. We will also be displaying the stuff that typically would be shown on paper or on boards in the room. So Chris will share that when the appropriate time comes. So the other thing I will state for the members of the public that are here, that 3 of the scheduled hearings, one for the Marshall Street Solar at 39 Marshall Street, one for a special permit at 799 Washington Street, and one for a dimensional variance at 0 Birchwood Road, have requested that we continue the hearings to a later date for various reasons, which I think the board we will bring them up shortly and vote on it. We'll be inclined to do. So if you're here for those, very shortly, we'll give you the opportunity to leave if you'd like and not miss anything. You're certainly welcome to stay for the other hearings. So that being said, to the board, we have currently a meeting scheduled on the 22nd of this month, where we have 3 new applications to hear. We have a meeting scheduled May the 6th, which we had intended to hear the 40B application, but they've asked for some additional time. So what I'm suggesting is that these 3 continued hearings be continued to the 6th, if that makes sense, and that we come up with another date for a later date for the 40B. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Yeah, this is Jay. I think that makes
Yeah.
good sense to me.
Okay.
Makes sense to me as well.
John, this
So-
is Karen. The petitioner for 0 Birchwood was looking for a little bit more time, but I believe he's on the call, so he can probably weigh in.
Okay, that's Mr. Carvalho.
Yep.
Yep. And Mr. Carvalho, if you'd like more time, would the 20th work for you, or would you like it later than that? Up to you. I'll unmute yourself. I think.
There he goes.
He might not be there. He might have walked away from his camera.
Oops. Well, I just unmuted, it looks like, but we're not hearing you. Oops. Now you're muted again. Oh. Okay. Mr. Carvalho, we're not, maybe you could chat and guess what sounds like it works for you. If not, I think we could continue to the 20th and then further continue if we need to. Okay, first glitch. Well, could I ask for a motion to do the other 2, the 39 Marshall and 799 Washington, to continue them till May the 6th at 7 o'clock?
So this is Jay. I'll make a motion that Sunrise Investments located at Marshall Street. Sunrise Investments, also known as Marshall Street Solar LLC, for the petition at 39 Marshall Street until our next regularly scheduled hearing, which will be, what did you say, John? You wanted to have it, which is the date?
May the 6th. It won't be our next one. It'll be the one after.
Okay, so it's the following. Okay, so on our regularly scheduled hearing on May the 6th, did I say?
6. Yep.
This is Liz. I'll second that.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the board?
No.
Okay, we'll go to a roll call vote. All in favor of moving the 39 Marshall Street, continuing it till May the 6th at 7 o'clock. I'll say aye. John Love, aye.
Jay Peabody, aye.
Liz
Mark Bush,
Dembitzer,
aye.
aye.
And Liz Spitzer. The motion carries 4 votes to none.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue the special permit application by Attorney William Harvey for the application at 799 Washington Street until the May 6th hearing.
This is Liz. I'll second that.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. John Love, aye. Jay.
Jay Peabody, aye.
Mark.
Mark Bush, aye.
Liz.
Liz Dembitzer, aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 4 votes to none. Sorry, no, Mr. Guella, we heard you come in there at some point, but it was a little bit broken up. Did we try again?
I think there's an attempt happening, but I don't think there's anything coming through. I see
Yeah.
it's shifting to him, but it's not reading whatever he's saying. What time was the, this is Jay, what time on our agenda was that petition? Because what we could do is we could wait till the agenda time frame.
Yeah, well, everything's
just
at
continue it.
7, so,
Okay.
yeah, all right. Well, yeah, so we can do that at any time during the meeting.
Don,
We'll-
this is Karen. I do have an email from him saying that the 20th would be okay.
Okay, thank you then.
All right, then I'll make that motion. This is Jay. I'll make a motion that we continue the request for dimensional variance at 0 Birchwood Road until our hearing on May 20th, 2020.
This is Liz. I'll second that.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. John Love, aye. Jay,
JPBDI.
Mark,
Mark Bush, aye.
Liz?
Liz Dembitzer, aye.
Motion carries 4 votes to none. So, okay, we'll put all 3 of those on the May the 6th agenda. The other item of general business that we have is...
Well, no, the last one's going on the May 20th agenda.
On the
right?
20th.
Of the 40B, but we never opened that, so we don't have to continue.
No,
I
I
think-
mean, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. 2 of them we've done to May the 6th and 1 to May the 20th. My mistake. Thank you. Okay, the other item of business is approval of the minutes for our March 30th meeting. So does anyone have discussion? They just came today or this evening, and that was the meeting that we continued all of these hearings. So,
They look in order, Mr. Chairman.
okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the March 30th ZBA meeting as drafted.
It's
I'll second it.
Mark Bush. I'll second it as well.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? John, aye. Jay,
J.I.
Mark,
Mark, aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the continuation of the special hearing at 0 Maryland Street for AT&T, special permit hearing that we have heard a lot in the last couple of meetings and still continued. As I recall, and I would urge all of you to help my recollection because it's been a little while, but we were waiting for our peer review of the consultant's report, which has since been received and hopefully read by the board. And there were a couple of specific questions about items like the fencing and detail of some of the generator area. Were there other things that anyone recalls we were looking for?
This is Jay. I know our peer review report was the report by IDK Communications dated February 18th, 2020, and in that some of the concerns raised by abutters at the time were addressed in that report, and then I did see a further correspondence from the applicant's counsel, which is Simon Briganti, to Karen, and it might have been directly to the peer reviewer as well. There were a number of CCs on it with certain answers that were raised in the peer review report, and it did include a a couple of additional pieces of information. One was a spec on the generator, also some renderings related to the generator. And then I think there was also a structural report that was an analysis of the current structure that the siting was going to be, or the tower that is the current siting. So that's the new information that I had received, and I think the follow-up we had heard from the abutters were related to, I think it was some noise generator spec, and then there's one other thing, and I can't find it in my notes. I know that they're probably on this call, and they might recollect or refresh our recollection, but there was one other thing.
Access through Fisk Street instead,
That's
different
right.
access?
Attorney Briganti is on here. I think that, yeah, that is one that we didn't get from Briganti. I wonder if
It might have been that alternative access point.
yeah, it looked. I know they were discussing with the utility company access from Fisk Street rather than Maryland Street for service. I wonder if there is any update on that.
If I can, Simon Briganti, Centerline AT&T. Also, I just did note that there's a chat note, I think it was from Ms. Troland, asking if the minutes are available online. Is that something that could be addressed, just to make sure that?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Yes, I believe that the minutes are all online, aren't they, Karen? That the March 30th
minutes
probably are
will be
not.
online. Right.
Oh, once they get approved, correct. Okay. We did speak with Eversource about coming off of Fisk, and the issue that arose there was whether there'd been any change, because that was accessed or used by T-Mobile when they put a similar antenna structure to what we're requesting up on one of those facilities there some time ago. And whether the access through there would not necessarily be crossing over any newly classified wetlands, because there hasn't been a study out there. So, you know, the request from AT&T was that if it were allowed to have the access off of Maryland Street, which again, I had addressed based on the other issues that came up regarding truck idling and things. So I did address that separately, but whether that could be, and if a condition, if this were to be approved, a condition could be included to say that, you know, if it's possible, we would try to use the access off of Fisk Street. And again, the access, once the facility is constructed, the access consists of a panel truck or a pickup truck or an SUV once about 10 times a year, a little less than once a month. And again, the agreement could be, and if that wants to be, if the board were to approve this and want to make it a condition, that the individual would completely turn their vehicle off, make sure they're not blocking any driveways, would not be idling, and would access off of Maryland. Again, if it's possible to do it off of Fisk after a study, we could recommend that to Eversource if they allow it, but that's not technically in our control, like I said, because we don't have any easement rights down there. We would only have the availability of what Eversource has provided to us here, but we would like to work with them if that would be an issue. So, you know, my answer, I guess, is to say we'd like to have the ability to come off of Maryland Street, and if there's a recommendation that we try to work off of Fisk, we would accept that and try to do that.
Thank you.
And if I could clarify one other point that was brought up by one of the members there, I believe, that structural report that we provided, it does, it was a study of the existing tower, but with the proposed additional structure on it. And the indication was that with the additional structure, the structural integrity is still sufficient. There wouldn't be any needed modifications or strengthening of that structure. So that structural report that analyzed what's there And then in addition, what would be proposed to be put on there through wind loading, ice loading, just weight and all those multitude of variables.
This is Jay again.
Okay,
Mr. Briganti, what was the size of the generator? Was it a 20 kilowatt generator or 15? Because I know that there was a discrepancy.
Right, I understand that. What the plan showed 20, there was a discrepancy between 15 and 20, but since there's been a uniform change throughout AT&T's process, they're now using 24 kilowatt propane LNG models. I did state that when I sent an email out to Kim Sherman on February 20th. And that is the spec that I gave to you, that one page cut sheet, the model 24 RCL. That is the 24. So if, again, were this to be approved when we submit for a building permit, we would take the zoning drawings that we have here and enhance them to include the specifications necessary to make them as building permits and construction drawings, and we would include a uniformity at 24.
This is Jay again. So further to that, can you describe, so to the extent that the abutters haven't seen the correspondence in the record
Right.
from you to Karen, can you also describe the sound attenuation buffering you were proposing there too?
Sure. Well, the first one is that we did get a little bit of an unusual concession from the generator folks. And what that was that because these generators have to be ready, and they only get employed if there's a significant, which I think is over 48 hours or 36-hour loss of continuous loss of power. And in order for them to be able to do that on a short notice, they have to be tested once a week. And that test runs from 20 to 30 minutes. The concession that we got from the generator people is that they usually would run all their tests either in series, geographically, or just in the way that works best for them. What they agreed to here is that if there's a recommendation from the town, either your board, somebody, the building commissioner, or anybody else, to say, we want that test to be at 4:30 every Tuesday, or we want it to be at 7:30 at night, or 10 in the morning on Wednesdays, or Saturday even. If you give us a time and date and day certain, they could modify their schedule to do that. So you would have control over when that testing was done. Secondly, the sound itself, it comes out at what they call 54 dBA during testing, and then it would go up to 61 during full speed generator diagnostics and normal operation. And just for the record, the levels that are as stated are measured at 7 meters or approximately 22 feet with no load from the source. The town bylaw states that no person shall operate or cause to be operated at any source sound level of 10 dBA ambient measured at the property boundary of the receiving land use. The nearest residential property lines are approximately 77 to 80 meters, or about 250 to 260 feet distant from the generator location. In addition, the generator is proposed to be located on the side of the existing tower away from the residences. In between the generator will be the cement wick or walk-in cabinet, the existing utility structure itself, an 8-foot fence, and a copse of trees and brush approximately 125 to 175 feet deep. All of these will serve as sound buffers. On the plan we submitted, a chain link fence is proposed, which AT&T is agreeable to replacing with a stockade fence. In addition, AT&T is offering to install what is known in the industry as sound attenuating infrastructure. I sent a sample for illustration purposes along. Those are the types of barriers that you might see along a highway or in other strategic locations to deaden the sound. I also sent a comparison of what somebody mowing their lawn, what a lawnmower would sound like, or what an air conditioner would sound like. And that 54 dBA is at the low range of that. And plus, with the distance and the existing buffering, we believe that the sound would not be audible at any of the property lines of the residences, but we would be willing to do a subsequent test if there was an approval. We could bring a meter out there, do a public test, and if it turns out that it's above the 10 at a property line, we could do additional attenuation measures. But we think that, again, between the natural buffer of the woods and the brush, the artificial buffers of the fence, the sound attenuating buffer, the tower itself, the cement cabinet, that would all serve as blocking of the noise of the generator.
Thank you.
Does anyone have to be out there when they test a generator, or is it done remotely?
It's done remotely.
Yeah.
Well, as long, again, I will, preface that by if there's any issues with it, if there's been any damage or any, wind issues or ice issues or anything like that have been detected, because they do have monitors, they would have to send somebody out there. But in a normal course, no, there's nobody out there.
Okay, one other question that's been raised by one of our people here is that in the report it talks about the tree losses at frequencies of 1900 megahertz or greater than the cellular frequencies of 700 to 800 megahertz, and they plan to operate in the 700 to 1900 megahertz range. Can you confirm that that's the range that your consultant's radiation level that he referred to when we had our meeting back in, I believe, January, that was based on those?
Yes, we did look at Ivan's report there, and that was consistent with what we had presented with Ivan Pagachik. That was consistent with what Hayes had presented when he gave that in-person presentation at the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the board members have further questions or issues that we need to follow with, or feel you've got sufficient information?
I did want to, if I could, after, I did have one other item, I just wanted to reserve that.
Okay, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so as far as what next steps would be, we're in two processes that have been going in parallel here. One is that we're completing what's called the Nepa Report. The Nepa Report is the study that's required under the National Environmental Protection Act. And that, I think, as I may have explained previously, involves assimilating information, documentation, and input on a variety of sources, everything from ambience, from species presence to historic structures, to environmental issues, a whole range of things. We will be presenting that report to the building inspector. Again, if this does get approved, we would provide that to the town. And the supplement we would have essentially is that it would be I'm sorry, the one item we're waiting for is what's called the tribal notification. Under that requirement, we have to notify all federally recognized Native American, they still refer to them as Indian tribes, but all federally recognized tribes within Massachusetts, essentially. I think there's 3. And they have a certain comment period within which they would be able to explain whether they have any issues with the proposal from a cultural or religious practice aspect. And we have not gotten any feedback on that. Typically we don't. In a few instances we have out in the, as you get out towards Cape Cod and some of the islands. But in this general area we don't. I think we're about maybe a week or 10 days out from getting that final report or that final comment. If there is anything that would come up, that would also be something that, we would try to work with them prior to applying for a building permit if it was approved at this level. Second point is that your town conservation commission did do a review of the plan back, or the application, I'm sorry, back in on November 5th, they provided, of 2019, they provided some comment. And they said that it looks like we're 210 feet outside of Hollistob Brook, which we believe we are. There wouldn't be a need for a request for determination of applicability or notice of intent. There is some variable scale, so they're looking to confirm that the scale is accurate. We believe it is, but what we're doing is we're having a additional survey work done out there, both to determine, to ensure that we are outside of that 200-foot buffer, and also to be sure that the flagging that was previously of the wetlands was accurate, because when you're out there in the fall or even the winter, sometimes you can get a little bit of a misinterpretation of the field evidence because of the frozen ground or the season of the fauna out there, or the flora, I'm sorry. So that's being looked at as well. The Conservation Commission has been contacted here, and they're talking about the 100-year floodplain. They've said that the antenna itself does not require a filing, since that's existing. But then they talk about the site work, which is the propane tank, the chain link fence, which we would turn into a stockade, and then the walk-in equipment cabinet. So that's, again, another ongoing thing. So if we did get approval here at this board, we would still have those 2 items to complete prior to being able to do any construction. As I stated, I think previously, it may have been by email, we have been requested by the FirstNet people to the federal government there to get as many of these sites, to final stage approval or disapproval, to try to get this network, moving ahead. And we've explained that, in Massachusetts, you do have this due diligence. I think they understand that for the most part, and that does respect the input from both the community and from the town boards and agencies. So those are my 2 points about the tribal input and the environmental. I think that was all that there had been. I think there was a question about whether the wind would cause excessive noise with the apparatus on top. And I had explained that wouldn't, again, that is addressed in the report there, the structural, but the antennas themselves are only 11 inches wide by 7 inches deep. So the wind hitting them really wouldn't necessarily make any noise that would be discernible, again, past those trees and anything more than what's already coming from the existing towers.
With one other quick question on follow up on the Nepa report. Who actually performs that, and who is it submitted to?
It's a consultant that we hire. On this case, I want to say it's a company called EBI. I'd have to look back at that, but AT&T hires the consultant. It gets filed with the agency itself and gets provided to AT&T, since we pay for it. Once that report is finalized, we will pass that along. Again, like I said, we'll get that to the building inspector, and through him to your board, to make sure that, if you were to approve this, you make it a condition that you want us to submit that for your review, that's fine. We can do that. Or if you want to rely on the building inspector to, not issue a permit until the NEPA is completed and filed, and that's and acceptable, and that's fine.
Does that get filed with anyone else beyond him, any other authorities, or?
Not in town, I believe. Like I said, it gets filed with the agency itself.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. The federal agency. Right?
That's quite all right. Just wanted to be clear, because the question came up, and that's a fair one. And in terms of in town, it just would come through us. That's not to the Conservation Commission. Okay. All right. I think if the board is satisfied that we have the information we need, I would give, I know there's people here that have been following this and been involved. So if you have any further questions of the applicant, would entertain them. Now, I think when I look at the names here, most have already gone on record, and I really don't want to repeat a lot of the stuff that's already been said because we've heard that and given that time. But if there are either new questions, first, are there any questions? And if you have that, either send me a quick note or unmute yourself and we'll recognize you. All right, not seeing that. Are there anybody, and again, if you're already on record, it's not necessary to do it again, but if you aren't, please feel free. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard in support of this application? Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition to this application? Okay, well, I want to thank both the applicant for your continued reaction and response to our questions and to our citizens who have been so diligent about asking and creating a situation where we have a lot of information about this. So thank you. If the board has, oops, wait a minute. Did I get it? A new note? No, this is the one about conservation. Sorry. Okay, so if the board's good, then we would ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
This is Jay. I'll make a motion. We close the application for a special permit by the applicant AT&T Mobility New England by Centerline Communications at the location 0 off Maryland Street.
This is Mark. I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote to close the public portion of this hearing. John, aye. Jay?
Jay, aye.
Mark?
Mark, aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. So it has been closed. We will hear our other hearing. Hopefully we will be able to deliberate on this later tonight, to which people are, again, welcome to stay tuned. You don't have the opportunity to participate any longer, but it's open deliberation. Prior to that, though, we'll hear our other hearing. So thank you all very much for your participation and insights into this and for all of the...
I'm going to continue to monitor, but I'll be on mute. But if anything does come up for any reason, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Right, that being after the hour of 7 o'clock, I'd like to open the public hearing for a special permit at 28 Curve Street. I think, Chris, if you wouldn't mind putting up the presentation, and Lindsay, if as the applicant, perhaps you could unmute and walk us through what you are asking for and why and how, and we'll follow up with some questions. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. This is Lindsay Maloney. I am the applicant at 28 Curve Street. My desire at this point is to install a kennel inside a bedroom in my home so that I would be able to offer services including training, daycare, and boarding for some local dogs in need. My goal would be to provide a place for these dogs to come where they are not a good match for traditional doggy daycare, which is a very open concept kind of application. The dogs that I would be trying to take on would be dogs that required additional training, handling, or care, so that I could be able to provide additional guidance and assistance for those owners in town. So we're not planning on building any kennel outside or anything like that. The idea would be to provide this care in a home environment so that these dogs are as comfortable as possible and can make as much progress as possible, hopefully in a short amount of time. So I was originally scheduled for a meeting in February, but that had some technical issues. So I was able to receive the comments from the Board of Health, and also from my abutters in the meanwhile. So since there wasn't a real great way for us to communicate, I did start this page on my website, so I can make sure I was being as transparent as possible with not only my abutters, but also the community around us, and the other individuals that hopefully would be able to use my services. So I just wanted to be as transparent and address all of the concerns and comments that I got. So again, most of the information is clarified here. This was right after the meeting that I started this, so we could start to consolidate all of those comments here, and also show my intentions and what I was planning on doing and accomplishing in the meanwhile. So this does show some of the concerns that were raised, or comments that were raised, had to do.
Interrupt you just a half a second.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, we've got an open meeting here, that we never did read your application in. So I wonder if I could ask that we read the notification into the record if we have it. Is that something that you have handy, Karen? We typically would do that, and I apologize for.
You're talking about the legal ad?
Yeah, I think that's what we typically do, right?
This is technically, the hearing is open, and this is a continued public hearing.
I'm sorry. This
That's
isn't
okay.
new. Gotcha. Continue, Lindsay. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So I just wanted to make sure I had taken all of that feedback and consolidated it in one place. That's really what this this page is intended to show. So this is at www.fluxpackdogs.com. That's my website. This is the community updates page. It does start to bring together all the information. Like I said, I wanted to make sure I was clear with my neighbors that I was not trying to build a kennel outside, and that all of the dogs would be housed inside my home in that bedroom. There are a bunch of pictures attached as well below to show the beginning stages of the construction of my in-home kennel. So you can see there the wood flooring in my room, and some of the kennels that we're in, and also the condition, as we scroll down, the condition of my yard, and also the fencing that does go all the way around. This is my family room, which is where we would be spending a lot of time. And again, back to the yard. So if you scroll down a little bit more, I think there are some pictures. One of the comments that was raised was about the condition of the fence. So I just wanted to make sure I showed that the fence is in good condition. There is one area where we have a fence post failing and it leaned. So I showed some of the condition of those of the fence as well. So you can see where the one fence post is leaning there. So as we progressed, one of the big issues or concerns by my neighbors was, of course, adding dogs to the sound that was already coming from my property, which included my 2 roosters, because I had a couple of breeding projects going on the last 5 years. So one of the concessions that I did make in an effort to hopefully reduce the noise coming from my property is we did move the chickens, the roosters off the property, so we will only be having hens from here on out, which does terminate my breeding programs, but it's definitely a concession that I'm happy to make. I have some gratuitous pictures here of my roosters because I do miss them a bit, but again, a concession I'm willing to make to hopefully be able to follow my dream and be able to help these dogs. So as of March 5th, the roosters were removed. If you want to scroll up a little bit more, then you can see we're starting to install rubber matting in my kennel room so we can make sure that we are able to sweep and mop efficiently without damaging any of the old flooring that is underneath there. We really love the integrity of our old colonial homes, so we just want to make sure that we're maintaining that as much as possible, since we do live in a historic area of town. So that is something I've always loved. In Holliston is the history, so we just want to make sure we preserve it there. So you can see we have housing for several dogs. I have lots of X-pens and other kinds of crates and bedding that we can use to best suit the dog as they come in. And again, this room is separated from the rest of my house, so it would be in its own contained area for these animals. As far as the fence is concerned, there's the last update there at the top. We did reinforce the post there so that it would be nice and straight. We do have fence posts fail occasionally. I think the last time we had Mr. Fence come out years ago, they just suggested that we wait till more than one fence post goes. They haven't been out in, I think, probably 6 years or so. So it's been quite some time that we've had a pretty wonderful fence out there. It's been in really good repair. So as soon as if other pieces start to fail or we have any issues with the fence whatsoever, it's such a major part of my day-to-day as it is with my personal dogs. I really wouldn't be able to allow that to deteriorate in any way, shape, or form. So we'll certainly be on top of fence maintenance throughout. Other yard maintenance, obviously taking the dog waste out. We've always had our dog waste removed weekly with the trash, so it's always gone out with the trash. I don't expect us to have a significant increase in dog waste. We've had a lot of dogs come through the property. We've been able to manage it pretty well as far as my own personal dogs and foster dogs for rescue are concerned. So daily cleaning is a habit. Daily exercise and enrichment for these dogs is a normal habit in our home. So what we'd really like to do is to be able to extend this management style to the dogs that need it. There are a lot of people out there who are stuck leaving these dogs at home because traditional doggy daycares won't take them. So I hope to provide a more advanced handling solution for those dogs. And I really feel like I'm in a place that we'd be able to provide that at this time. So a lot of the information is spelled out on this page. I don't know if there are any particular questions that or concerns that anyone would like me to address at this time.
Okay, we'll open up to the board for any questioning regarding this application, the applicant.
I had two questions, I guess. Hi, Lindsay. Would it be why wouldn't other places take these dogs?
Some of these dogs don't like playing with other dogs. So a lot of general doggy daycare is 10, 20 dogs in a room with 1 or 2 handlers there to supervise. So I would be providing a much more one-on-one approach.
And the other thing is you take the dogs out into the yard so they can use the bathroom. And then you're saying your yard is cleaned up every day?
Oh, yeah.
And the waste is put
regular.
How often is it? I didn't hear.
Oh, daily. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
We use the yard so much. If we're running around out there enough, then there's no way that we won't be running into waste. So we definitely clean it up right away.
Okay.
And how is that contained?
We have a galvanized can outside where we collect all the waste, and then it goes out weekly with the pickup.
Okay. Board members have additional questions?
None for me.
And I believe in your application, you asked for the right to use up to 10 dogs. Is that correct?
Yes, I have 4 dogs of my own currently. I also foster for Northeast Boston Terrier Rescue. So in the interim where we've been sequestered, I have taken on 2 foster dogs for them. So I do have 6 dogs on the property at the moment. Obviously, we're not taking daycare dogs as non-essential business. So we wouldn't really be able to get started until most of this is lifted anyway.
Okay. I have no question.
This is Jay. I don't have any questions either.
Okay. I thought I did, but I can't remember it.
But yes, it is 10 total dogs on the property.
Okay, and I know what it is. How are they picked up and dropped off, and just people bring them to your
Yeah,
home?
I do offer some pickup services if it's requested, but typically the owners would come to the house and drop off. One of the comments from my neighbor also was about the cars in the driveway. We had some repairs to do. We have 3 vehicles right now. There's only 2 adults in the home. And so one of those vehicles is going to be sold, likely 2 of them, to replace it with a smaller vehicle. So we make sure that we have enough room in our driveway. Currently has space for 4 vehicles, so I just want to make sure we have enough space for clients coming in and out. Also, typically, my husband would not be working from home. He would be working from his office in Brighton. So normally there would only be 1 car in the driveway during drop-off and pickup time.
Okay, and your driveway fits 4. And then the foster dogs, they're there for typically a longer than.
Yeah, so right now we have, because the rescue has shut down adoptions at this stage, these dogs are ready for adoption. And once the stay-at-home orders are lifted, then we'll be able to get those dogs homes and they'll be moved out of the home at that point.
Okay. Good, I think that answered mine. At this time, are there anybody in the audience that has questions of the applicant? There's a small enough number, I would say just unmute and speak if you do. Identify yourself too, please. Okay. Well, at this time, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to be heard in support of the application?
I'm sorry, John, you cut off at that moment. This is Andres. Was this in favor or against the application?
This is in favor first.
Okay, in favor. This is Andres Vargas, a neighbor. I do want to speak in favor. I want to second pretty much everything that Lindsay said in regards to noise, to the trimming of the dogs, to the pickup and drop off of dogs. It's a very quiet street, so I see very minimum impact. And once again, even though we're not talking about roosters, we're talking about dogs, I've never really in the years I've lived next to Lindsay heard any noise from her dogs. But I do appreciate a lot her concern about the noise of the roosters and her action towards that for supporting the entire neighborhood. So all in all, just want to second the motion and give her support to Lindsay's endeavor.
Thank you, Andres.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wish to be heard in support of this? Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition to this application? Okay. Well, I thank you, Lindsay, and I thank you, Andre, for your input. At this time, if the board has any further questions, this is it. In that case, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Jay. I'll make a motion that we close the public portion of the request for a grant a special permit by the applicant, Lindsay Maloney, at 28 Curve Street, Hollistob, Mass.
This is Mark. I'll second that.
Well, I just had a question about the emails that we received. Do those have to be noted or are they just in the record?
So this is Jay. I assume that, and Karen can agree, but I assume that the whole application package has been uploaded. So it is available at the town website. So any information we've heard was uploaded, and to the extent somebody wanted to further elaborate that, they could have attended and said that today.
Yeah, well, and a couple of the communications that are part of that were specific opposition or complaints, some of which has been addressed by Lindsay's actions since then. Some are more general.
So this is Jay again. Karen, do you agree that we don't have to specifically cite it? It's already in the record?
Agreed. I generally would put them in the decision as just part of the administrative record. There is also a staff comment from Scott Moles, the health director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have all of that in the record.
Okay.
I did try to, this is Lindsay, I did try to consolidate as much of that feedback as possible on that website, so hopefully I did address all of the bullets and concerns there.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion about the motion to close the hearing? All right.
None from me.
Okay, so let's move to a vote. We'll do a roll call. John, aye.
Jay, aye.
Mark,
Mark, aye.
Liz,
Says aye.
thank you. That hearing has been closed, so we'll take that under advisement. Lindsay, and hopefully we'll be able to debate on these tonight and issue a ruling when we do.
Great, thank you very much.
We'll write up, just so you're aware of the process, we'll write up the decision. It will go to the town clerk. We try to get that done within a week of doing it, and usually pretty successful. After that, there's a 20-day appeal period in which anybody can appeal our decision, either you or anyone else. Presuming that doesn't happen, then the decision becomes final and you can act on it.
Great, thank you.
All right. So again, thanks
Karen,
everyone. Yes.
I'm sorry, before you start, you may just want to clarify for the other folks on the call who haven't participated what the board did at the beginning of the meeting, continuing the other hearings out, because you may have people waiting there that are.
Somebody didn't show up late and wait. There were 3 subsequent hearings scheduled for tonight at 39 Marshall Street, 799 Washington Street, and 0 Birchwood Road, all of which the applicants had requested that they be continued to a later date, given a lot of circumstances going on now. 2 of them, 39 Marshall Street and 799 Washington Street, were continued till May 6th when we have a meeting. And the third one at 0 Birchwood Road was continued to May 20th. So I apologize for anybody that wasn't with us in the beginning when that happened. If you were hanging on waiting for those, I hope you found our other 2 hearings of interest, but we won't be hearing anything on those tonight. Okay. Again, now the public hearings have been closed. I presume the board is in a position to deliberate and hopefully generate opinions. Again, everybody is welcome to stay on. You're not able at this point to participate. This is purely the board's work. So I'm going to propose that we look at the AT&T special permit and work our decision around that. So pull out the original request. Blow the dust off of that, 'cause it's been a while. So this was a request for a special permit pursuant to section V-O of the bylaws, allowing a antenna structure to be added to the existing structure on the Eversource right-of-way and tower. We've heard that, so let's look at our findings of facts on that, and then we can discuss whether we're in favor of it and what conditions we want to put on it if we are. So The concerns that were raised include visual appearance. They include the concerns about potential radiation from the radio energy produced. They concern noise from the generator. They concerned potential hazard of it being a propane generator and propane storage. There was concerns raised about access to the service, the things, the facilities there. Am I missing anything else that I just can think of?
No, I think that covers it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let me just grab our minutes to make sure that we, and okay. And
Because
So those were-
they're pretty explicit, I think.
pardon me?
They're pretty explicit in terms of how they're listed, and then how they're enumerated. Because I know we don't usually do that with most of our applications, but this one the bylaw is so clear. It might be an easy way for us to check right down the list.
Oh, from the initial. Yeah, it's a good thought.
Can you tell me the page, the bylaw?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that. So if you go to section, so I'll give you the page that's easier. So starting on page 71.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
So if you look at starting at the regulation and restrictions, section 4, the general standard, each one of the elements of the general standards in this instance are likely provided for, and our issuance of a special permit need to be in compliance generally with those provisions of 4A to be in harmony with the bylaw. So it just seemed like an easy framework to walk through.
Yeah, I agree. So why don't we just pop down those, and anybody raise concerns, whether to your satisfaction.
Right, and because then once we pass through that, then we can kind of look at the other elements, and
yeah, I agree.
At that point, we've covered everything.
Yeah. All right, so screening, landscaping, preservation of existing vegetation. Are there any concerns regarding that?
Yeah, I think that they should, in terms of the noise, I think that, AT&T said they would, but it should be a condition, I would think,
Yeah,
of
I agree.
adequate vegetation around the generator and what's going to be making the noise.
Which you mentioned they would do some sort of noise abatement, fencing or whatever he called it. So I think we should just integrate that into the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the email that Mr. Briganti provided, he actually called out the spec of it. You might as well just integrate that spec. It seemed like it was
think that like 71 is when it's going full. But I guess I mean, can we do something like, after if it's running, to actually go take a measurement at a property line to ensure that it's, within it's not making more noise than anticipated?
Yeah, we could. I think, given the noise specs from the thing where that's the probably least of the issues. But yeah, we certainly can. And we have the building inspector has the ability at any time to enforce the noise bylaw.
Right.
So that's always there regardless of what we require. All right, so that's going down. We've done the screening. So we want to, if we do this, we want to require the fencing that has been described, which I think will go a long way both to shield it visually as well as audibly. We've got camouflage. I think that tends to reflect the stealth type of towers, which is not applicable here. I think here the camouflage comes from the fact that they're putting it on an existing tower that's already putting out there. But yes, so I don't think the stealth type is what makes sense here. I don't think it's possible either.
I think the mere fact that it's being put on an existing 135-foot tower is 132-foot tower is in and of itself a good selection of a location versus a new full structure.
Okay.
I agree.
Next one is height, and as I understand this was, I think we said 14 feet above the existing, so or at maximum of that. Sounds like it's more like 10 that's built, but that seems to be in keeping with that as well. Color that's interesting. Did we talk? I think we did at one point talk about color, but I don't recall.
I mean, it's hard to know what color is going to stand out the least.
I think it came up, but all right, we need to look that up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent possible, have it match the existing tower.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right. Okay, fencing. So we've talked about they need sufficient fencing to keep out, to be secure for safety's sake. Also, we would like to use the noise attenuation fence that has been proposed to protect that. And what do you think about stockade versus the original chain link that was specified? Is there does anybody feel that's necessary, or I'm indifferent?
Well, stockade will cut down on the noise more than chain link.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that's, the applicant also indicated that was acceptable, so I think let's put the belt in suspenders. Signs, no advertising permitted. We can make that. So any signage should be purely instructional or safety related. Lighting was also not an issue because I don't think they, other than anything required by FAA purposes. personal safety when devices are mounted in locations above or in the vicinity of pedestrian areas or other areas open to the public. Such installation shall be made in a manner that does not impede or restrict movement of pedestrians nor pose a hazard to any person, which is really not applicable to where this is. And we have further prohibitions, no razor wire or advertising signs. Great. Are there other conditions that we would like to put on there? I think one is that the schedule for testing the generator be acceptable to the building inspector. Because I don't know if we want to say what that time is. I think it just gives them somebody to, if people in the neighborhood are the only people that I think really would have a vested interest in that. So that gives them someone to work with. Does that be reasonable?
Yep.
Yeah, and I would also put a time limit on it. I mean, they're programmed so they'll start up. We've got them in dozens of our commercial properties at work, and they generally fire up around 10 in the morning for their tests once a week.
Yeah, so that testing be limited to typically one 30-minute test per week. I think we should.
Yeah, and just not early in the morning or late at night.
Yeah, or at a time approved by the building inspector.
Time and day.
Yeah, time and day, right. Good. Other conditions that you would?
Well, maybe, no idling of the, when the people are coming to do maintenance, right? No idling of the trucks, and it can't be parked, blocking anybody's driveway.
Yeah, I think I'd even put a condition. I don't know how much teeth it would have, but that the applicant make all diligent efforts to limit access to Fisk Street if it's possible, legally possible. And in the event they need to use the Merlin Street, that there be no idling of trucks and no blocking of residential driveways. Does that work? Or?
I thought he mentioned they had no right of access over Fisk Street.
Right, that's what I heard as well.
I thought they had to find out whether there's been they don't have it right now. That's what I'm saying. I don't think we can require it, but he said that they would need to do a wetlands review to see if that is what come up in the past, but none's been done. So,
I mean, it's going to be such a modest coming and going that I'd be against it, unless you guys can convince me, I suppose, but I'd be against having to sort of force them to use the best efforts to use the Fisk Street access. It seems like that. It seems like a bit of a burden.
Okay. Yeah. What do people think?
I don't mind just putting it in. If they can do it, they should do it. I'll make it. I don't know how much of a burden.
I don't think it would have much teeth.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I wouldn't want to condition it because, if they can't do it, then all of a sudden they've got basically a condition that they can't.
Oh yeah, but when you say make all efforts, I mean diligent efforts. That's not saying you must use Fisk Street.
That's fine.
Put it in as a finding of fact instead of a condition. Say that the
applicant agreed to utilize best efforts to get access over Fisk Street or something.
Yeah, knowing that it may not be
Okay.
feasible, legally. Yeah, I think we'd like, the board encourages that, but on the other hand, that, you know, once a month of having a truck parked there isn't terribly burdensome, I don't think.
Is there
No.
language that we can put in? Oh, sorry. You want to
No,
continue on that?
no, you go ahead. No.
Yeah.
Is there language we can put in that says something like, you know, the person servicing it should, you know, I don't know how to say it, but not hang out and eat their lunch in the truck and for a long amount of time, but just, you know, services as quickly
I
as
don't think
possible.
that's really enforceable.
Is right, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Liz, I just, while we were talking, I went on Google Maps, and I mean, the nearest driveway is 270 feet away from the base of the tower. So they're going to park as close to the tower as they can get. They're not
Yeah,
going to walk
right,
that far.
That's true.
Yeah, I think just protecting the thing as well. And they do have a need to get their job done, and you know, a van is not a horrible thing, but we should protect them. Okay.
At least you didn't say they have a right to eat their lunch.
Given, whereas servicemen get hungry too. Yeah. No, I don't think we need to regulate their lunch.
No.
Besides, we're not the president.
Nice.
We missed
I
that
know
one.
there were concerns about the propane storage. I don't know if there's anything we can put in that isn't already in law, you know,
Yeah,
about
I don't,
having propane tanks on
I don't
property.
feel like an expert on that, but I'm also
Okay.
have seen hundreds and hundreds of propane tanks.
On residential properties all over town.
Residential, commercial. So I think there are certainly health and safety standards that regulate that, but I think they're, you know, you're muted, Jay, if you're talking to us. So
Sorry. Didn't they also recommend this was sub-slab propane tank?
yes,
Yeah, so it's even more safe
Right.
than the standard residential.
yeah,
Like
I think as long as it's there. So before we've been putting these conditions and addressing, let me ask the, you know, sort of the overarching one. Are people in support of granting this subject to all of these things before we get too far down? I'll go on record as I think it is an appropriate and necessary permit, and I'm in favor of it, but want to make sure you guys are okay.
So this is Jay. You know, if we were to keep going down the special permit provisions and the gates in this provision of the bylaw, I think they've met the general standard, at least with some accommodation provided. I think our peer review consultant made it clear that the installation was, I don't know if he used the word essential, but he certainly said that it was needed in the location for the proper functioning of the telecommunication services. So we did ask that they look at alternatives. The threshold test does not work, that there's I think it says another location or alternative installation is not workable. I mean, I think we asked them to sort of tell us why they couldn't do it somewhere else, and I felt like we got that. We definitely heard of Butters about them saying that the location could adversely impact their adjacent property materially. Not to sound disrespectful, but there's already a 132-foot telecommunications tower there. So to me, I have trouble, other than, you know, maybe their concerns about the safety of, you know, the comings and the goings and the noise with the generator and the propane, which I think is going to be adequately addressed. I think the impact, if there was any, already existed. So, you know, I didn't find it to be overly offensive, and And honestly, I did feel like it was proposed very well and in keeping with the bylaw.
Any other concerns?
Well said. No, I agree with all of that.
Okay. Was everybody's concerns regarding public safety, which was a lot of what we did, met by the consultants? There was issues of energy dissipation, radiation, et cetera. And that was, does anybody have unmet concerns about that?
No, that was a concern, but I feel like they adequately addressed it and educated me anyway. And I think that was the most important concern, and I think it's addressed.
Yeah, I think the review and the background that's in our record is very clear to me that this is, it's a relatively benign addition to an already existing structure. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. I guess I'm less comfortable with the fact that he took an hour of our lives that night, but but I can't get that back.
Yeah, agree. But I now know more than I did. Knowledge is good. All right. Any further conditions then that people want to suggest? I think with standard register it, et cetera, we need to go on there.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just realized that. The other thing I think we would want to have happen is just that standard catch-all of all other permits and and related requirements, so that we can get the conservation and the federal permit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any further comments or discussion?
None from me.
In that case, could we get a motion by somebody to grant the permit as described?
I can make the motion. So this is Jay. I'll make a motion that we approve the grant of the special permit located, by the applicant AT&T Mobility New England by Centerline Communications LLC for the location at 0 off Maryland Street, pursuant to Section VO of the Town of Hollistob zoning bylaw.
Okay.
This is Mark. I'll second it.
That's seconded. Could one other condition I did think about that suppose that it be substantially in accordance with the plans and
Right.
specifications.
Yes.
It kind of goes without saying, but okay.
So my motion would be to grant the award of the special permit based on all of the conditions, findings of fact that we discussed, plus the inclusion by John regarding the plan and specification of the actual installation itself.
This is Mark. I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. This is John. I vote aye. Jay?
Jay, aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we'll write that up and do it. Okay, moving along. Our next is for the.
I just thank everybody for their attention, the detail, and the courtesy that was extended, and I appreciate that all. And I want to make sure everybody understands this is we like to continue a dialogue on these things. I'm not just going to go away. If anything comes up at all during this process as it goes, keep you informed. If Ms. Sherman has anything that comes up, she knows how to get me. So we want to keep this momentum going with this as we apply to the building permit and get the additional information in. So I appreciate the assistance and the thoughtfulness. And we're not going away. We'll be here. So thank you again.
Well, thank you very much for all the information and your prompt response and the consideration for our citizens that you showed. So stay safe. And
Okay, you too, and enjoy these meetings. I've done a number of these, and it'd be nice to see people again. So thank you again.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next one is our application for a social permit at 28 Curve Street for the for doggies. Any thoughts or concerns or issues overall on this?
I think the biggest concern seems to be the roosters. I mean, it's funny because people really commented about hearing the roosters, but nobody commented about hearing dogs. And she's had several dogs on the property, so I thought that was a good concession.
Yeah, keeps your neighborly relations a lot better. Okay, if people are generally sympathetic to this, what considerations do we need to put into it if we're going to allow this? Because I think it is.
We need to address the at least walk through particularly the Board of Health concerns. I think we probably want to walk through those and at least integrate them to some extent into conditions if this is approved.
Right. So the first is a maximum of 10 dogs, which is what the request was for anyway. So anybody have feelings about the number being inappropriate? So we would limit it to 10 dogs, just total dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And any combination of owner and client. The deed restriction, excuse me. The deed restriction, is that something, yeah, I guess that is zoning related. We should probably.
What did he write about that? That seemed a little strange. A deed restriction. Is it because of the septic?
Yeah, that it's 3 bedrooms and a kennel as opposed to.
The deed restriction.
Based on something. I don't know. Is that in our purview?
I mean, typically, I know the Board of Health will issue septic permits with a request in it that there be a deed restriction recorded at the time. But I don't think we've ever done a deed restriction. We have permit restrictions, but I can't recall us doing a deed
I think he
restriction.
was concerned that it be shown as 3 bedrooms and a kennel so that when anybody does the calcs, they're different than 3 bedrooms. So do they need, the Board of Health can require that, right?
That's what I kind of am suggesting.
Yeah, okay. I'd rather they did than us because they know what they're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Same with the rodent control plan, that would be something that, or maybe we put a condition that it meet any requirements of the Board of Health, but that sort of goes without saying. They have to meet any requirements.
I mean, the Board of Health, let's think about this. The kennel permit is got to be independent, right? So the Board of Health has to issue the license on an annual basis, I assume, right? Wouldn't it be annually? Is Karen still there?
The kennel license comes through the Board of Health.
It has a
It's just the
copy of it
state.
somewhere.
Well, that's it. I think that's the state animal inspector, the animal control inspection report,
Animal officer, yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
So
I believe the
if
town
that's
clerk
the,
actually issues the license.
say that again?
I believe the town clerk actually issues the actual license.
All right, so if that's the case, then we probably do need to include some of these restrictions, because if it's not going to show up anywhere else.
Okay. Well, so then we have the deed restriction, the rodent control plan, pet food stored 6 inches off the floor. Open pet food should be placed in rodent-proof containers. Kennel floors swept and mopped. Do we want to say all those?
I don't think the separate sink should be required.
Yeah, these are,
That's the recommendation.
well, they're getting further and further from our area of expertise, such as it is. I get less and less comfortable. They're all sound like.
All right, so let's think about the legal landscape for this. So you have a use permit, which we grant. We can put reasonable conditions on it. Then we have the animal control permit, which is effectively a kennel permit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think. Let me just look again. A kennel inspection. Okay, so that's the inspection. And Karen, you're saying that the only thing that we get issued at the town level is going to be the town clerk's issuance of a
License per the general bylaw.
Okay, so there's nothing in that, and that license is just going to say you have a right to do X. It's not going to say you have a right to do X and you have to do Y and Z. So it's the only place we have to sort of enforce specific restrictions in this decision.
I believe so, but I mean, if you'd like me to look into it a little bit more, I could.
It would just seem to me that the Board of Health should have the specific conditions and the oversight of those conditions.
Yeah.
Can we defer to them? So can we say in our application, subject to all reasonable conditions placed on the use by the Board of Health?
I'm sorry, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, we're all asking ourselves that. That's kind of.
Well, I'm kind of asking myself and you at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a vague condition. But do we do that in any other things? Do we do subject to conservation, subject to?
Well, when we issue a zoning decision on a variance or a like a variance on a building issue, the building commissioner is the one that enforces it for us. We don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if we can kind of defer the way we do to the building inspector.
But the building inspector is enforcing conditions or whatever that we've already articulated. This one, we're asking somebody else, we're kind of delegating, the conditions to another body, which I don't know.
Which seems appropriate to me in this case.
Yeah. Well, it's either that or we delegate. We've already delegated. We're accepting their recommendations because.
Right, we're just reading off the list.
What we could do is we could say, we could just integrate it by reference and just say, subject to the Board of Health conditions as set forth on the February 4th, 2020 letter.
Yeah, that seems good because that's in the record.
Right. I'd almost rather do that.
Yeah, I think so too, because I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to enumerate these individually. Let's just make sure that all of them we do agree are are okay. I'm going to the second page. Outside play is identified over the leaching area. That seems fine. Outside play. A couple of them are questions, but
All reasonable.
yeah, I think that's probably the best bit that we incorporate these by reference and gives them some teeth, but gets us out of
Can I
the.
just ask quickly, so the bullet about the animal waste disposal, he calls for an independent waste hauler contract. Are you,
Oh,
is that what you're?
Well,
It's
it should be
weird because I thought she said in her application that, I mean, I know during the hearing, she said that it will go out with the trash. But then
right.
in the action items, if dog waste becomes an issue with current waste removal company, FluxPack will contract with another service. So it sounds like she does have, you know, a waste removal company, or maybe that's
Well,
referring
even if
to
it's
just a
with
regular.
even if it's with the
Harvey.
counselors, that is an
Yeah.
independent waste. She's
Oh,
not
yeah.
disposing of it herself,
Mhm.
which I think they're concerned. So I think it still meets this if you put it in regular trash. That's an independent waste hauler.
Right. Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. The hours of operation, there's overnight thing, but I think the hours of drop off and pickup maybe could go with what was in the letter that she submitted. I believe it said.
Yeah, it's 8. She said 8 to 9 is the drop-off time a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. is the pickup.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I guess. Yeah, well, that's what you asked for. Let's do what I was going to say. I'd be inclined even to be more expensive, just not too early, 7 or something be the earliest. It is a residential neighborhood. But is that what it said there, Mark, 8 to 9? Okay, I think that's reasonable. And one of the concerns about the waste is that it be picked up daily and removed weekly from the site. So, anything else that?
I don't think so. Everything else is generally covered under either sanitation rules or noise ordinances. So I think we're okay.
Okay. Anybody interested in making a motion?
I will. So I'll make a motion that we approve the grant of a special permit by the applicant, Lindsay Maloney, for the use of 28 Curve Street, Holliston, Mass. So it's a special permit pursuant to I guess it's section 3D21 and 4E of the Holliston zoning bylaw, as we described and with the conditions as we described them.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's moved and seconded by Liz. Any further discussion? We'll go to a roll call vote. John, aye.
Jay, aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
motion carries. Well, thank you, folks. Sounds good. Just before we adjourn, everybody okay with there's the 15th and the 6th, and then we hopefully are reasonably caught up. Then we've got the 40B coming.
We have the 22nd.
Next week.
And May 6th.
I'm sorry, today's the 15th,
Right,
22nd.
yeah.
Yeah, next Wednesday, and then May the 6th. And then the 40B, we need to actually come up with a date for, and we suggested the 20th, if that looks okay to people.
So right now we're only going to have Birchwood and the 40B.
No, we've got 3 new ones next week.
I mean, on the May 20th.
May 20th would be the 40B. We were going to just do the 40B as a single thing, but now Birchwood sounds like that would be in there too. Because the 40B will take multiple meetings, I presume, but they'll have probably.
Are we going to have outside counsel for our 40B like we did the last time?
This is Karen. You do have the option of applying for a housing partnership grant, which is how we funded the outside counsel last time. You do also have the option to use town council and potentially apply to Mass Housing Partnership for other types of technical assistance. You know, whether you wanted someone to do a financial audit or provide other technical assistance, it's up to you. I believe we are eligible for that as a town. We're not a frequent flyer. Generally, it's a $10,000 grant, and they do manage all the paperwork directly.
I liked whatever we did for the project on Washington Street. That seemed to, we got good counsel when we needed it.
Very helpful.
Yeah. So that was the grant, Karen?
Yes.
I mean, I would suggest we do the same exact thing. And then if we see the application and we have concerns about the financial elements of it, I suppose we could at that point even consider a financial, like a financial audit. But I think I'd be comfortable going with what we did before.
Who is bringing the 40B? Do you know the applicant, Karen? Is it anybody we've dealt with?
Well, it's an LLC. And you've dealt with, no, but it is a resident of Holliston.
Okay.
This is the one that I think, Liz, you're going to recuse yourself, right? So it's the 3 of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we just have to make sure that we know that for planning purposes, because we have to always have 3 of us.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think? Does the 20th?
That's fine for me. I mean,
Yeah, works.
I'd be
works for me.
comfortable opening it. I mean, typically with those, we usually open it. They do their big presentation,
Right.
and then we
Figure out.
we figure out what's next.
Okay. That's good. Well, good. Anything else? So this worked out fairly well tonight. I'm pleased.
Thank you very much for all your time. I really appreciate all the time and effort here.
Okay, Lindsay, yeah, you heard.
No problem, thanks.
We'll get that written up and to the town clerk as soon as possible, at which time the thing will start. And
That's awesome. I'm really excited. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Good luck with your venture there.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yep.
Yeah,
But I would agree, John, good job on keeping it organized. I know these are sort of not the easiest thing in the world sometimes to manage, but you did a good job.
well, I think we, think about if there's the good news is we all do these things now, and are kind of used to it. So setting the rules up front is helpful, and people were very respectful, which was helpful too. But yeah, it's not quite the same as being there, but it's there. And Chris, thank you so much for all your help with this, because it really made it go smoothly and made it very easy for us.
Not a problem.
Getting it all set up, keeping me off the ledge.
So then you get to say, before we adjourn, same bad time, same bad channel next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have your packets. So when I'm in town tomorrow, I'll just drop them at your houses.
Okay. I have one of those things that you reach out and grab things with. I can.
Yeah. The other thing is all the materials are on the website if you feel compelled.
Yeah, that was kind of handy. I hadn't been to some of that stuff, but it's nicely set up now. So
yeah,
you guys are like,
doing them permanently.
A house closing on Friday, and it's really weird because Massachusetts, they've passed some of these interim measures, but they still don't let you close remotely. So we have to go to the bank attorney's office, but the only people that will be there will be us and the bank attorney. Everybody else, the seller has already signed everything and had it notarized. We have to go and have it notarized and pass the papers, but it's really weird, the stuff that they've put in. They don't let you in until the last minute. They hose down the tables and everything in between, and you all sit 6 feet apart or more. And, God, it's weird, But,
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Massachusetts is like one of the only states at this point that haven't passed this Remote Notarization Act. I'm not sure why, but
right. And it seemed like this might be just what it'd take to put them over the edge, because they've changed everything. Not that one. And
yeah.
I think it was pushed by some of your colleagues in the real estate.
It's not me, by the way. I haven't sat at a closing, and John, Mark's probably the same way. I haven't sat at a closing in years.
Yeah.
Nor have I.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, we'll see. So anyhow, Sarah, well, that sounds like we've wrapped up our business. So if anybody would care to.
I'll make the motion to adjourn the public meeting.
I'll second it.
It's been made and seconded.
Third.
All in favor, John, aye.
Jay, aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
The ayes have it. So thanks,
All right.
everyone, for your
See you
time.
next week. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, John.
Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks all.
See you
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.